Welcome to Sacred Alchemy, the podcast that turns lead into gold one conversation at a time. We're your hosts, Holly and Victoria, blending our passion for human design, astrology, and transformation to help you align with your true self.
Each episode explores the interplay between cosmic energies, personal blueprints, and the practice of healing through mindful rituals and inner alchemy. From understanding our unique human design to using this knowledge as a tool for personal growth, we will guide you through the steps of transformation, transforming limiting patterns into empowering potential. This podcast is a journey of self-discovery, spiritual awakening, and practices healing methods that activate your highest potential. Tune in to learn how to balance the energies within, align with your soul's purpose, and heal through sacred practices tailored to your design. So I think many of us are waking up to the fact that our society has functioned under a very religious narrative for the longest time. And I think we're starting to realize how much of it has impacted the way we treat people, the way we treat women, the way we treat minorities, and things like that. And people are just waking up to this different sense of reality within themselves and around them. And even based on research, for example, Pew Research Center in 2020 has recorded that religious unaffiliation has risen from 16% to 26%. So people are definitely recognizing the suppression that it comes with, and they're looking for other ways to explain their, spirituality and worldviews and find different ways of living, functioning, and perceiving the world. On top of that, for the longest time, astrology was a big, not taboo. It was a taboo, but at the same time, it was, this like psychobabble, where now research shows that 1 in 5 adults in the US has consulted an astrologer. And if you know anything about astrology, you know there's a lot of things in there that does correlate with our journeys and issues, and you might even try looking into your chart just to explore it, just to see what it's about and realize, oh my God, like this is the issues I need to work on. And they become more clear because now we have the houses, the identifications, and we have ways to have more self-compassion towards ourselves because we realize that this is almost like worked into our plan, right? Our soul plan, our journey. So it becomes, you gain more self-understanding, self-knowledge, and also self-acceptance of self and others because you understand that they also on some kind of plan, right? And sometimes our plans mesh together well, sometimes they don't. So it creates this whole other perception of psychology and self and trauma and things like that. And I see just around me that more and more people are using astrology, human design, other esoteric practices that help them to get to know themselves better and with that understand the world better.
So you bring up really great points as to the why. Why are people looking more towards spirituality and less towards religion? Because religion has been such a framework created to keep a hierarchy, for lack of better terms, and conditioning. So that's our why, right? We're waking up, we're noticing that there's issues with that. We're noticing that these hierarchies, these social customs and so-called norms are not as inclusive as we want them to be. They're not based in whole truths that we would like for them to be based upon. And we feel that and know that from the inner work, the inner knowledge, the inner truths that come from spirituality and our own individual journeys. And so that brings us to the why, will bring us to the what. What are we going to talk about? So we are going to do a number of series where we're going to focus and take some deep dives into tools, frameworks, theology, different blueprints, different tools. So we're going to have the alchemy of self-discovery, which is where we are going to talk about breaking free from the conditioning, deconditioning ourselves from the bias that we've been taught, since we were very young. And those things have just been passed on generationally, right? We're also going to be talking about shadow work. That's truly important. It's really one of the first steps. Anyone who's been through the dark night of the soul, and you know what that was like for you. But I think it would be great to talk about how that work continues on, right? That's not something you just do and then it's done. So we're going to explore that among bracing your own individual authenticity. And what is your authenticity? What is true to you once you break down the conditioning and the bias that you've been taught. You're regurgitating, rights and wrongs that we've been taught by society. But what really makes it right or wrong?
And that's a great point. That's a great point on what makes it right and wrong. And for the longest time, because we were, looking at it from perspective of good and bad, right? Good versus evil. We don't leave any room for nuance, right? We don't leave any room of, sometimes both things can be correct, or they can be right and wrong depending on the circumstances, right? So, and a big thing when it comes to like personal identity, rather than thinking about, is this right or wrong, thinking more from perspective, is this aligned with me or not aligned with me? Because if you even think of like a person, you're meeting a person is not aligned, right, of what you're looking for, just the way you want to function, right? This way it doesn't create the dislike, right, or making the person bad or whatever it might be. It's simply they're not aligned with you. The job is not aligned with you, whatever it might be, which that's what creates that more room, right, of coexisting without necessarily deeming something good or bad, black and white, whatever it might be, right? So yes, the alchemy of self-discovery, this is obviously the name of our podcast is Sacred Alchemy. And if you look from perspective of alchemy, it's all about turning lead into gold, right? So using these shadow aspects and be able to utilize them in the way that makes you shine even brighter, because you don't just ignore your shadows, you're able to make them work for you, right? And you're able to actually use them in a way that helps you understand yourself and others in a much, healthier and more dynamic way. And this way, there's less friction with yourself and with the world. Big thing, who are you really? Many people think they know who they are and they think that they know themselves enough, but in reality, the first 6 years of our life, our nervous system is wired by our caregivers, right? Why we do things, or the way we perceive power, or the way we perceive different dynamics, things like that. You think they're yours, but in reality, your brain works like a computer, right? It is programmed, and whatever society is doing is going to be programmed for you. That's going to be normal. That's why different people perceive normal very different, right? Like somebody, like a child growing up in an abusive household, they think it's normal to do these things, right? Where a child who's grown up in a healthy household knows it's, unhealthy or whatever it might be. That's why we really need to step back and ask ourselves, who are we really? And it's a very scary question that majority of people are too afraid to ask. So the fact that you're here and exploring these topics already puts you in badass status, if you ask me. Okay, because a lot of people will run their whole freaking lives from who they are or facing the shadows because they just cannot bear the shame, or they cannot bear the admitting to themselves something is not right, or they have to admit something about their past that maybe it's really hard to face. So the fact that you're, exploring these topics and looking into them and see how you can, face these shadows, embrace your authenticity, be brave enough to do those things, you already should give yourself a lot of credit.
You bring up a great point about authenticity and questioning ourselves, and that can be really hard. People don't want to really take that deep look in the mirror. But one thing that we're going to deep dive into that will certainly help with that is the human design, which is such a wonderful synthesis of frameworks, sacred geometry, your birth chart, that will truly shine the light on where your authentic self is and how you're expressing yourself in an unauthentic way, or the non-self. And that usually comes through fear, frustration, initial emotional response. And I think we can all agree, if we take just a moment to reflect, that that's how a lot of us respond all the time to what we see in social media, on the news, even among our family and friends, is that initial emotional reaction that we then have to turn around and face, to either apologize for or to make amends for. And wouldn't it be so nice to understand how we individually work, right? Because again, this is all based on yourself. So my chart doesn't look like hers, her chart doesn't look like mine. We do have some, similarities, and we have things that we have learned that work really well together. And so with that, if you haven't already looked into human design in your chart, we really recommend that you do, because we are going to take a deep dive into it in talking about the energy types undefined centers and defined centers. That goes really hand in hand with the chakra system and the Kabbalah, the tree of life, numerology. Again, it's such a great synthesis of a lot of different studies, practices, tools. I know as a parent, I've always felt like kids don't come with instructions. Oh my gosh, I wish they just came with a set of instructions. But human design is kind of like that. It's a little cheat code that I've thoroughly enjoyed. However, it is very player specific. So it's not a one size fits all, but it is, how could I say this? A size that fits all though. Not just one, but there's many. And with that, with understanding your human design and understanding others, it will make the deconditioning a lot easier. A lot easier to cope with, to digest, to truly have those aha moments of validation and knowing, well, this is really who I am. Or, oh, shit, I didn't mean to say that or do something. It was just my sacral response.
And that's not to take any accountability either in terms of like our actions and so, but it helps you understand yourself better. Same as I was talking about deconditioning, and Holly brought it up. Like, if you haven't looked into human design, you need to. And this is why we actually chose to do this podcast, because we really wanted to create another resource for people, because we honestly, passionately believe that human design is going to be the next big thing when it comes to deconditioning. So human design is a system. Like Holly was saying, it uses many different schools of thought in one. So if you're familiar with astrology, if you're familiar with numerology, this is kind of like the love child of it all. And what it does, it personally gives you a graph, and this graph will tell you what is your part to play in this lifetime and what is not. So if you feel like pressured, especially now with media and everything and the way we've been brought up, it's almost like you have to be good at everything, right? You have to like just get on this hamster wheel and just feel a certain way, act certain way, you know, talk certain way, where human design specifies exactly how your body is built, how your design is built. So for example, I'm going to use an example for my head. My head is considered undefined. Okay, that does not mean that I do not have intelligence, but what that means is I absorb whatever is happening around me. I'm going to be absorbing it like a sponge. Okay, amplifying it, right? But I'm not here, for example, to just use my head. Like, I specifically, supposedly, according to human design, right? I'm here to help guide people and help them ground and help them become more self-aware, right? So I'm not going to be that person who, you know, just to like, you know, make choices straight from my logic. In fact, my design says I shouldn't be making choices by logic, because again, I'm amplifying what's around me. So that's another thing. Human design tells you what your strategy is. So it tells you how you should be making choices. It tells you what is your strength, like what are you here, for example, to bring to the world, and what you're here to learn from the world. So it kind of gives you these rules, right? Like not rules, of course, but it's more of a framework of what are you created to do. And I personally have been into human design for about 3 years, like as an experiment. I took everyone's information, pulled up my kids' charts, people I know charts, and just observed to see how much that correlates, how much I can see that to be correct. And personally, for me, it was life-changing, because I have a lot of openness. For me, I had to really work hard to decondition, because my whole design is to be conditioned, is to like explore and sample and flavor a little bit of everything, but not letting it to identify me or become me. So for me, it's really hard to find like what's mine and what's not. And human design was really the only one that was able to like really, you know, spread it for me. And like, so I could see the big picture and really start doing the work of deconditioning what's not mine. And let me tell you that my energy levels are different. My lifestyle is different. Stress, you name it. You know, it helped me to come back into my own self and actually use the energy the way it was supposed to be used. So if you're into astrology, if you're into numerology, if you're into self-work and self-development, human design really is going to be a game changer. It may or may not work. It does look really complicated at first, I'm not going to lie. When you first start getting into it, it looks complicated. But again, that's why we're here, okay? Because we have that kind of minds where we like to experiment with stuff and try it on ourselves first. And we're like, holy shit, like this is actually very, very positive. If more people knew about this, like the world would look a whole different, because human design teaches you that you're here with your own purpose, your own strengths. So it really eliminates competition. You understand why they are the way they are. You understand why you are the way you are. are you aligned or not? And there's no blame or shame or anything like that. It makes you more self-accepting and more accepting of others. And that's why we're here, is to make it easier. Okay, so we're here to really break it down, chew it up, make it more relatable, put it more in the context for you guys. We'll just say more practical, right?
More practical. But I think also you hit a really great point of, we're going to talk about the terminology, how it works, what it looks like. But we don't want you to just hear our stories and believe it. We want you to practice it, take what resonates, leave what doesn't, and see how it works in your life. We aren't here to just give answers. We're here to give tools and best practices and ideas and share those, and have you guys in turn, we want to hear how it works for you too. Because we truly believe if this works great for us, well, how wonderful would it be if that was a tool that everybody used? I mean, I'm sure we all agree and love and appreciate Wi-Fi and technological advancement. I mean, how else would we be able to spread a message like this without it, right? So as we're growing and we're changing and evolving, it's kind of our duty to help, spread some of that. And again, not saying, oh, you have to believe this, you need to do this, but we enjoy it and we want others to enjoy it as well. And to try it. Don't believe us. Be skeptical. Go try it for yourself.
We want you to be skeptical.
Because everybody's path and experience with it is going to be so different, and that's what makes it beautiful too, is that your chart and your spiritual journey is going to be unique to you.
Absolutely.
But it's great to have a community that recognizes that and fosters that and builds that up, because that's what the collective should be doing, is really encouraging and fostering an environment that truly paves the way for the individual and unique spiritual paths. And this is just, the human design is a remarkable tool to help guide you on your own individual path and make sure it's your own and not somebody else's, or for somebody else, for their cause. You're not working for somebody else's dream. You're not accepting something that isn't truly meant for you because you think that it might be for the betterment of your family, your work, your career, society, whatever it may be. And human design will certainly open your eyes to a lot of what you should be questioning, deconditioning, and then validating and solidifying in yourself. Really standing up and saying, yep, this is me. This is who I am. This is why I am the way that I am. And get it back to who we are as individuals instead of peppering in everybody else's influence on you.
You're actually suggesting to be skeptical, because that's like another big point that we wanted to bring into this podcast. Is we've been in spiritual community for quite a while, and there is a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of buzzwords and things like that, and people trying to sell you this message that really is a trap later on. And I wanted to point out those things as we progress through podcasts, like manifestation, things like that. Yes, don't get me wrong, those things are real, but it in a way serves as a trap and makes you discontent about things. And that's why I absolutely agree with Holly about being skeptical. By the way, we don't sell we don't make money from human design. This is purely to get the information out there, because it blew us away how much it was able to assist us in our own journeys and deconditioning process and so forth. And it was very easy to eliminate those buzzwords and those, now that spirituality is taken over, it's trending, and you're gonna have all these people coming in, and you can tell, like, I personally cannot stand that, because to me, when you use spirituality for monetary gain or, clout chasing or whatever it is, that's a low,
fraud is on the rise.
Right, exactly. So we also want to...
That'd be a really great tattoo at this point, honestly. Yeah, because fraud is on the rise. And so we definitely see spirituality trending. So how do you discern what is, someone who's being genuine and someone who's being not? And going back to, we could do a whole nother series about this too, honestly. We could add it to it. But knowing the difference and having that discernment of someone who's being genuine, somebody who has an actual practice, resource, or service to sell is a lot different. If you have someone who is telling you, reaching out to you and saying, oh, I feel so connected to you and drawn to you, tell me your zodiac sign and I'll give you a reading. I know all these love spells and the love of your life is waiting for you. I think those are more of the type of things that we're wanting to caution people about, because the last thing we want is for someone to get on this bandwagon and be taken advantage of as well.
And people in the
do your
spiritual
due diligence. Do your own due diligence.
And I feel like especially people in the spiritual community, like, in a way, some of people will be a vulnerable population, because why do we get into spirituality? A lot of the times is because we hit some kind of rock bottom. Right? We're some discontent with our life in some kind of way. It could be depression, it could be addiction, it could be,
NDEs.
Yeah, NDEs, CPTSD, like many things, right? So usually people that get into spirituality are, from core wanting to connect with source. And some of the people that are not very knowledgeable in spirituality, or they're looking for monetary gain, they will use that against people, okay? And think that they can help them control some kind of outcome or whatever it might be. We want to be that source for you that doesn't tell you things unless we tried it ourselves. We're happy to bring up topics, bring something to your awareness, or guide you in ways that you can find those answers yourself, and you can actually heal from within.
Your breadcrumbs and your journey is going to be completely
We're just
different.
here to activate. That's it.
We've talked about ours, I don't know how many times, and I feel like every time we do, we find a new perspective, we find a new meaning, we find a new lesson. We find something else that is very validating in our observation of the tools and practices that we've been using, and we want to share those so that it could be the same but different, and different in the way that it is unique to all of you. And so, you're really hitting the next great point for the next series, which will be the cosmic codes, astrology and numerology. We're going to deep dive into that as well, separate from the human design, because again, we are doing a multitude of series. 6 to 10 episodes in each of them, and really helping you to kind of understand where to go to understand your charts. Again, we're not reading charts, but we are going to be sharing knowledge, personal and practical resources, and kind of pointing you in the directions of where to go for yourself. But a big thing we'll get into with that is transits and how they affect us. All the energies that are spiraling in the cosmos, and how that's being transmitted, and we're receivers, and how that changes, daily. I really love that. I love the science aspect of all of this that we're going to be diving into, because again, big nerd, love that. And I think that's where we know how far we've come when we can objectively look at the sciences that are validating the spiritual journey as well. Because again, what is reality but once it's observed? So it may not be real to you yet because you haven't observed it for yourself, but once you do, then it will become real for you.
Absolutely. And a very good point that you brought up. We both are very science-based people. Holly and I both are earth signs, okay? We're a Taurus and a Capricorn sitting here, okay? So we're very practical and we're very grounded people. However, we also love exploring these different topics because we don't believe that there is only one truth. We believe that, it's a whole spectrum, right? So
it's a whole spectrum.
It's a whole spectrum. And I honestly feel like deep in my heart that, if I could come with like one mission on earth is to somehow scientifically bridge astrology with science and psychology. I really, really feel like it's possible.
You want to formulate it, don't you?
Yes, no, seriously. Like, I want to prove that because I done it as an experiment, as a special interest, learning it for fun, right? And learning it not just for fun, but also for, self-development. And really being able to recognize, like, holy shit, it's full moon in Cancer, right? Like, this is going to be an emotional one. And no kidding, everyone around me will be losing their mind. And I'm the only one new and prepared for it that it's going to happen. And it's, again, scientifically, we have data to back it up, right? Because the most cases in ERs, the most incidences, according to police, are on full moon. So it's not that this is some weird coincidence. There's data to back this up for hundreds of years.
And I think it's worth noting that the fact you are very consciously aware of a full moon and what is expected, that awareness is what helps differentiate those emotional responses again that lead to that crazy behavior, the erratic behavior that leads to, the increase in crime or accidents. Oh my gosh, the emergency rooms are always like, oh shit, it's a full moon. Like, don't jinx it. Don't say, oh, it's awfully quiet for a full moon.
If you have kids, I promise you, your kids act the craziest during the full moon. New moon and full moon, at least for me. But
Yep.
yes, we're definitely going to do our best to bridge this. And again, we're also going to be big on communicating with the audience. So, for example, if you have ideas, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to us on Instagram, TikTok. We're going to make sure to link ways to contact us, because we are. Yes, we've been doing this and exploring for a little while, but we also, want to hear what you guys are thinking. Another big thing is mind and body, spirit connection. I feel like public schools have really done a number on us with beating that out of us, because they tell you when are you supposed to be hungry, when you're supposed to use the bathroom, if no one else is eating, why should you be eating, if no one else uses, like things like that, right? So it pretty much robs you of that autonomy. So if you went to public school, you like it or not, you've been conditioned to not listen to your body. You've been conditioned not to listen to your emotions. You've been conditioned to pretty much know how to stuff down, listen obediently, follow directions, pump information in you.
It's indoctrination.
Exactly.
And it'll tie back into the human design with the energy types as
Oh,
well.
yes.
When you expect children to come into an institution, sit down, shut up, retain all of this data for short-term period, right? Not long-term practical application, to only score well on a standardized test. So great job. You've proved short-term memory. Thank you so much. You have also stifled children socializing and learning conflict resolution. And let's not even get started on the restriction of body movement, right? So not getting out their energy, not fine-tuning their motor skills, or appeasing to their natural talents and really honing in and fostering that. It's really not until the later years, when it's already a little bit too late, when they're in high school, to start introducing for more expansive electives.
Like, we're pretty much conditioning the kids to be okay with burnout. Like, pretty much.
We are.
Like,
It's
like
the beehive mentality, too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And another big thing with mind-body spirit connection, we're not really taught about our bodies. If you really think about it, right? Like, nervous system regulation, that didn't become a thing more, verbally expressed until a few years back, right? We knew what nervous system
What about
was.
mental health? I mean, we haven't even...
And we knew those buzzwords, but they were never
That's
taught
right, yeah, those
how
buzzwords.
to, actually maintain it or take care of it. Again, self-care for the longest time, thanks to religion and other different parts of conditioning, it looks as selfish, right? Self-care, it's really this cute, sweet thing, but don't do it too much, because you don't want to care about yourself too much. It's almost
That's
like
egotistical.
it looks
But
from the
again,
egotistical
we're
point
gonna
of view.
condition your ego to put everybody else first and not yourself.
Again,
and that
pushing
was,
to burnout.
That was on purpose.
Yeah, because as long as we push people into burnout, they're not going to worry about how to break free from it. They're just going to worry just to drag along. For us to make this world a better place, we really need to look within first and do our part of the work, and eventually help others. And hopefully one day this all comes along.
Yeah. Because we've all heard hurt people hurt people.
Right, exactly. And we don't talk about it enough.
So you make a great point in needing to heal ourselves individually, and why that is so important. And it's so important because we aren't just here on these journeys and these paths for ourselves. We are, but there's more to it. Because again, remember, there's more than one truth can be true at the same time. True. So when we heal ourselves, we're also healing the collective. Because now we're not going to be embodying and exhibiting poor behaviors, biased and conditioned responses. We're going to be a lot more caring and compassionate, holding space for people that need it. But it also gives us the opportunity to create. So if we think about creation and how does that happen? How does somebody, oh my gosh, I know you've seen it, right? You see some new advertisement and you're like, oh my God, I should have thought of that. Like, that is so great. What a wonderful $1 million idea. And what about all these overnight success stories? Okay. They aren't overnight. You just didn't realize it until overnight, and something went viral. But it truly is something special to be a part of a collective and conscious community. And we are going to deep dive into what that looks like, what it has looked like in the past, because again, as above, so below, as within, as without. So we have had collective shifts, both in positive and negative, and we're going to talk about where do we want that to go? Where do we see ourselves going if we are on these spiritual journeys and paths of enlightenment and healing? Where can that possibly take us? And what can we possibly do, not just as individuals, but the collective consciousness, when you are able to tap in and contribute to the collective consciousness, and especially from a healed place, a place where you do self-love and you do know how to do the shadow work and use that as your fuel for creation and innovation to drive it further and progress it, not regress. We don't want to do that. Don't do that.
It's okay to take a few steps back if you need
It's
to.
okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Retrograde. What?
Yeah, exactly. And another big thing, too, that we can also work together as a generation is breaking those generational curses. And I know some of you that are listening, you can relate to that, right? Because the way previous generations raised their kids, like, it's not the same anymore. It's not the same anymore. A lot of us have went no contact. A lot of us really started seeing the patterns that we do not want to repeat anymore. And, we're raising our children, for example, way more mindfully, I believe, than generations before us. So I feel like that's something that, as we're working on ourselves, it's also going to come out in the world where these generational cycles are going to be broken, belief systems broken. And if we do it together, because we serve each other as mirrors, right? And that's like a big thing we're also going to discuss about, because it is a whole other, while inner work is very important, you'll realize just how much relationships play part in reflecting you the truths or what's unhealed and things like that. And you also gonna start viewing disagreements or confrontations from a whole other perspective, because you're gonna start seeing it rather than who's right and who's wrong. You're gonna look more at it from a perspective of understanding. Like, I understand why you're acting the way you're acting, or why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling, and what's unhealed in me and causing me, to react or feel triggered and things like that. So it's a good thing because it tells you what you need to be working on, right? Or what already healed. You're going to notice that after doing, lots of work, you notice that certain things don't trigger you anymore, or they don't upset you anymore. And that's when you can be at peace with yourself that, wow, I healed that part of me, right?
Ooh, another good way of knowing is when it doesn't necessarily trigger you anymore, but you've been through the work, and now you're able to put up a healthy boundary, and you're able to hold steadfast to that boundary. That you're like, hey, I love you. I see that you're going through something hard, and this is triggering for you. This is your shadow work. So now I'm reflecting, I'm telling you, like, I see this, I notice this in yourself, and everybody's shadow work is their own. Again, kind of circling back, looping back, because everything's connected anyways. Your shadow work is your own. We can't rely on others to do it for us. Now, but at the end of the day, our shadow work is our own. And when we get triggered and we're upset by something, it's not somebody else's responsibility to tiptoe around that trigger for you. It's your responsibility to come to terms with it and heal that and face it so that you aren't triggered anymore, but instead you're not having a triggered emotional response, but that you're able to say from a place of discernment, that's not for me, or this is for me and this is why, and I have a healthy boundary around that. And that's definitely when you'll know.
And you'll also start realizing that it's becoming easier and easier to say no to people. It's becoming easier and easier to cut friendships and things like that, because there will be times where you're triggered, right? But you're not triggered because of unhealed wound. It's because others, again, if you're talking, let's say, with a toxic parent, a toxic ex, right? You'll realize that your consciousness and their consciousness, like, just don't, like, they don't see. So it'll be easier for you to walk away from those relationships, because you're going to value your healing and your progress more than abiding by someone else's perception or even delusion or narcissistic behaviors, because they'll try to bring you back down, but you're gonna be strong enough to continue to keep going in your aligned path rather than falling back to those old toxic patterns.
If you've ever struggled with codependency, this definitely helps. This
yes, absolutely
certainly helps eradicate and rebalance you to a place where you're not codependent anymore. A
big thing about the practical magic, that's something that needs to be reinstated and become more normalized, because, again, as we talked about earlier, we've been under a lot of religious rule for hundreds of years. So these things are kind of looked at almost evil. Divination methods, tarot, full moon rituals, things like that, right? Especially if you're a woman. If you're a woman, moon rituals will change your life, okay? Because you are synced to the moon cycle with your cycles, right? Your menstrual cycles. So you will see how it all correlates with the luteal phase and ovulation phase and all of this, your energy levels, and soon you'll start realizing that, oh, I'm, bleeding right on the full moon or right on the new moon. And you will again start seeing patterns and recognize just how much you become one with nature. And that was ripped out of us women for a reason, okay? It was because that's what makes us come in our power. And we're going to be discussing practical magic ways and ways you can connect to yourself and the source and things around you and the nature and bring back those beautiful practices back in our daily lives without worry of being condemned or burned or, told that you're evil. Because again, this was done with a purpose, with a reason, because fear makes people follow. So if we scare people into not doing these practices, they'll have no, other thing to do besides follow what we tell them. Because what's more dangerous is someone who has a lot of inner power, someone who is empowered and is in tune with themselves and the world around them. That's threatening. It's easier to have fearful people. So please, whenever we do episodes specifically on practical magic, I would really recommend listening to that. Find ways that work for you to implement that, because that will also change your relationship with yourself. Okay? When you start doing these things for yourself, your subconscious mind will pick up on how much real work you're putting in. It'll pick up on how much you're spending time on really healing yourself, and you're going to see things working way faster than just working with your conscious mind. Because big thing about magic, okay, a lot of it people don't realize, it has a lot to do with subconscious. Repeating certain phrases, right? Focusing on certain visuals, certain smells, burning certain herbs, doing certain things. You're using all your senses, which again, your subconscious communicates through sensory, visual, repetitive type of experience, right? So you're working on a subconscious level. The conscious mind is like an ant leading an elephant. Like your conscious mind is does very, very little for you. You think it does, but it's very little. Really, you're driven mostly by subconscious material. And when you start working with your subconscious and, utilizing scientific methods and those ancient practical, magic methods, you will see how those two start getting along and how you see progress way faster, and you start graduating a whole different relationship with yourself than you had before.
And 2 points on that. I know lunar cycles are specific for women. Men, fret not. You guys live by the sun.
Yeah.
You get your own cycle. We'll talk about that. And again, going back to what's taboo and the fear-driven, like, oh, it's full of demons, it's witchcraft. I would challenge any religion to prove that they also don't practice witchcraft. The Eucharist and the incense, the blessings and everything, it's just packaged differently. But that's also proof. If you believe in that and that's what you've been taught by religion, then you're already halfway there. But again, it's only a very small piece of the
I'm
truth.
just saying, drinking someone's blood and eating their body sounds pretty freaking witchy to me, okay? But we do that some people do it on Sundays. I'm just saying, okay? They stole a lot of our pagan shit.
They did. But nothing slaps like some holy grape juice and some Jesus Christ crunch. I'm just saying, they're kudos to them. I mean, they made it tasty and convincing.
And we're not hating, by the way.
No.
I graduated from a Christian university.
We've
been down that route, okay? So we're not, talking too much, but we do believe that...
I'm a recovered Catholic.
Yeah, we do believe that it has played a really big part on why people are not doing so well and why we're having such a hard time with mental health, spirituality, and finding that inner harmony, because it's purposely been dysregulated for wrong gains and power gains.
And then we're going to move on to the future of humanity and conscious evolution. This is quite interesting, and this is where a lot of the other topics are also going to be tying together. We have entered into the age of Aquarius, which some of you may be well familiar or versed with, and if you're not, that's okay. We're going to go through it with you. But it is a collective shift, and it has a big meaning. It carries a lot of weight. We are definitely in an uncharted time that nobody on this planet currently, no one has been through before. And we are going to talk about those cycles, those transits, and what we have seen in the patterns with humanity and evolution in the past, and where we think we're actually going to be going to in the future. Some of those things that we're going to be talking about are breaking down old paradigms and creating new ones for ourselves that are a little bit open-ended, layered and structured better, differently. We're also going to talk about starseeds and lightworkers here on Earth and what they do. So for all of you alien enthusiasts, and the ancient civilization enthusiasts, we're going to dive deep into that too. And what that looks like, especially the sacred geometry. Philosopher's Stone, I know you love that. That's her flojo. But really talking about where we're going. And if you want a little homework, I highly recommend watching the Avatar movies. Get yourself up to speed a little bit on that, because we can look at what the collective has said and done and produced for us over the years and recognize the messages. But there are deeper messages of where we've been and where we're going, and really pulling the past and future to the present, because that's truly where we live.
Now, another big thing too, I don't think we realize as humans just how rare like we are compared to like Earth's history as a whole and species on this planet, right? There has never been a species like us that's been jumping through evolution like it's a freaking like hopscotch. I was actually planning on making this chart because it really puts in perspective. If you look, for example, how long dinosaurs have been around versus how long humans have been around, you're talking like a tiny, when I say a tiny fraction, I mean like 0.000 something, right?
Yeah, because you're comparing hundreds of millions of years
to
with
us
dinosaurs,
with a few 100,000 years. We are just hopping. Here comes the wheel. Then here comes the, Renaissance. Now here, Industrial Revolution. Internet came out, forget about it. Within that 1 century, we are doing things that, our ancestors couldn't even imagine. That sounds sci-fi fantasy, right? Because we are built to evolve differently. And this is where astrology really ties in, because I do personally believe that at certain transits, at certain things, something calibrates, something activates, and we go through another big change. So just like our ancestors went through a big change during the Renaissance, when they went through a big change during the Industrial Revolution, I feel like right now we're in the midst of another change, but this is more spiritual and conscience-based, okay? So you are going to be able to see more, feel more, connect with more, things like that. And it's going to progress. It's going to progress fast.
Yeah.
And that's why I feel like it's important to get this information out there so people are familiar with these different things, and are able, to educate themselves and see what resonates, because it will be hard not to recognize. And I know some of you listening probably have experiences either visually or like whatever it might be that you just cannot logically explain. Just going with science and what's known and logic is not the smartest thing to do, because there's a lot of things that are happening that are so new we cannot logically wrap our minds around.
I have a great example of how to kind of help y'all unwind your minds to open it up for that. So if we think about even just the computer, the camera, the microphone that we're using right now to record and prep this, right? All the materials to make those things have always been here on this planet. Humans have not created any new elements, right?
Just
from the periodic table.
Mix them differently together.
We only mix them differently. So, and it goes back to energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It can only be transformed. So everything from, building your house, your cars, phones, technology, all the things, all those resources have been on this planet for forever. The only thing that's changed is our minds, our innovation, our creation to transform creativity, yeah, to transform those resources, take those resources and refine them into something else. But if you look back 100 years ago and you see the differences between what we had then and what we have now, and you're like, whoa, shit, like we've really come a long way. I mean, I'm sure my grandmother, who's almost 90, she's seen a lot, okay? She's been through a lot of change, and it's only going to increase. And I really think we're going to catapult It is literally going to be like a slingshot of evolution when it comes to humans and what we're doing and how we're doing it.
And it's just important, not to get carried away, because spiritual psychosis is a thing. I've seen it before, and it's a scary, scary thing. And this is why we want to be, hopefully, that source for you that really puts in perspective, and not just from love and light perspective and not just logical perspective. We really want to bridge it, where you become familiar with these schools of thought, you become familiar with these different types of tools that you can use, because like Holly was saying, we do believe this is going to be a slingshot thing. And it's very easy for it to really start messing with your perception of reality. Okay, and it has to be done in doses, it has to be done in a grounded and practical way. And we really hope to bring something new in your awareness, or activate something in you, because everything is already in you, okay? You just need to activate it. And hopefully with material that we bring into this podcast can serve as that tool to help you activate yourself and explore things that you never thought were possible. Maybe you heard of them, but you thought it was just, a bunch of gobbledygook, whatever people say. Yeah. But you'll be able to hopefully explore it and see just how magical life really is and how insane our reality is. No drug could make this trippy than all. If you really think we're on a rocket in space, just going thousands of miles an hour through, you know what I mean?
And we're just going around, we're spiraling.
Yeah, just us talking to you, what is happening? You know what I mean? It's pretty fun.
Well, thank you guys for joining and listening with us today. We hope that you continue with us on this journey. You can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and listen in each week on all major podcast platforms like Spotify. If you want to share any of your stories and insights, or have any questions and feedback, you can also reach out to us on Instagram or email us directly at Sacred Alchemy Pod.
Beautiful. And remember, the path of sacred alchemy is not just about finding answers, but about embracing the questions, being present in unfolding, and trusting that all transformation is sacred. May you continue to honor your own inner wisdom, and may it guide you towards deeper alignment, peace, and purpose. And we'll see you guys next week.